is up, Internet? Welcome to the only podcast about movies. I, as always, am Matthew Kroll.
And I am Shahir Down.
And this week, we decided to do something a little bit different. And by we, I mean Shahir decided we were going to do something a little bit different.
Hey, you know, we have a choice of movies every week we can see, and we looked at the list, and the list included Entourage.
Right.
Spy.
Oh, yeah.
Insidious, Chapter 3.
Yeah.
Love and Mercy.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there's always Aloha in San Andreas just looming.
But then there was this one title on there, which, let me read the title out to you.
Sure.
A pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on existence.
Now, I want you, the listener, to really get into my headspace, because Shahir and I text during the day, like, what film do you want to do this week? Blah, 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 blah. And we were going through all the names he listed before, and then he said this one. And I mean, if that doesn't reek of art film, I don't know what does. But to be honest, Shahir, I was actually very excited to see this film. I said when we were texting back and forth, I'm like, this will be nice because I'm like the last two movies, like Mad Max, I didn't know it'd be as good, but I kind of knew what to expect. Kung Fury, I knew exactly what to expect.
And if we'd picked Entourage, Spy, or Insidious 3,
I would know exactly what to expect.
Now, here's the thing. So the reason we picked a pigeon sat on a branch reflecting existence, can we hyphenate that to absurdity?
IPSOABROE. Doesn't spell shit.
We'll just call it a pigeon sat on a branch.
Okay.
Now, the reason I picked that film is that many years ago, I was in New Zealand and I walked in completely blind. I didn't know what was playing. I hadn't seen a poster or anything to a film called Songs from the Second Floor, which is directed by Roy Andersson, a Swedish filmmaker who also happened to direct this week's film, A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence.
Or, as I would like to abbreviate it, Absurdity.
Absurdity.
That's the anagram, or
Let's just call it the
whatever.
Pigeon. Yeah, the Pigeon movie.
The Pigeon movie.
All right. And the reason I wanted to do this film was because seeing Songs from the Second Floor was probably one of the best cinema experiences that I'd ever experienced.
You've told me.
I walked out of that feeling a joy for cinema that I hadn't experienced in a while. I was elated. It was something I'd never seen before. I laughed. I was happy. And I kind of felt like there was so many possibilities as a filmmaker. There was so many things that this film did. And it wasn't a hugely popular or successful film. And I felt like I'd made a discovery.
Okay.
But then, as it turns out, with Roy Andersson, he's actually a very prolific filmmaker. And A Pigeon Sat on the Branch Reflecting on Existence. Boy, that's a mouthful.
Well, listen. This is a Swedish film.
Yeah, it is a Swedish film.
The second Swedish film we've reviewed on the only podcast about movies. And we've only done 3 episodes. So, biased?
Yeah,
you be the judge.
I think Sweden, the Swedish airline, should sponsor us and maybe fly us out to Sweden to do a podcast episode there.
I will, if they would like to do that, offers on the table. I will review any film your country puts out.
Look, there's a lot of Swedish films I like anyway. But A Pigeon Sat on the Branch is not a small film. It has won a number of awards. It's very well reviewed, but it's not one of these things. Is not like the other. Mad Max, Kung Fury.
Of course. Well, they're all kind of not like each other.
Yeah. So I knew what I was getting into with A Pigeon Sat on a Branch. What was your preconceived notion? What did you think when you heard the title?
Like I said before, it's sort of like art house.
Definitely art house?
Yeah. And I tend to go back and forth on art house. I mean, calling something an art film is kind of the dumbest thing one can do, I feel.
Okay, well, let's go on a scale. Let's say No Country for Old Men is kind of a hybrid art house. How do you feel about that film?
No, it's good. I like No Country for Old Men. I mean, that's a fine movie. But again, back to my point, calling a film an art film is just a way of saying, oh, you really have to think about this to enjoy it. That's really kind of what it is. And that's not to say everyone will enjoy it if they think about something hard enough, any art film. I'm saying, like, if you're meant to enjoy it or if it speaks to you in a way, art house cinema is sort of like that thing where it's like, if let's say Entourage is your really delicious instant mac and cheese, this is like the 7-course meal that you spent 4 days preparing for.
Or maybe sometimes you spent $400 on, and sometimes you like it, and sometimes you're like,
well,
you know
that's
what?
I
really want a cheeseburger.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
So going in, I had that sort of expectation, and I'd never seen anything from the director. I'd never seen anything like that. And overall, I do have to say that this is where my opinion of it gets complicated. It's a really good film that I didn't enjoy.
I can totally see that.
There's no question about this movie that it's masterfully done in what it's trying to do. I just don't think what it's trying to do is for me. So I'm going to try real quick, if you don't mind, to break down this movie. And I was about to say tell this movie's plot, but it don't have one, really. It has a minor plot. It's 39 vignettes,
Okay.
something like that. I think I caught that off of the interwebs. Basically talking about or showing you really the absurdity of human existence, which seems right up my alley. I think that's something that I would enjoy, and I enjoyed some of it. And through these vignettes, some of them sort of tie back into each other, and there's characters you sort of follow throughout, which we'll be discussing in a little bit. But some of them are just like an older dude smoking a cigarette out a window and a younger girl coming up that looks like they're sort of coupley smoking the cigarette with them. They smoke, they stare out the window, and that's it. Now, it's important when saying, 39 vignettes, that's fucking weird for a film. Like, why isn't this a web series or something else? It's first and foremost, without getting too much into the art direction of it, but the cinematography in this, there's no camera movements. It's all static shots, and it doesn't cut around in these vignettes. The one shot is what you get. So it takes a minute to sort of get into that groove. And that was something that I found very interesting and sort of nice. But then the order of them, and then the sort of recurring stuff versus not recurring stuff, some stuff felt super meaningful, and some stuff really felt like filler to me.
Right.
I've been talking for a while. What did you think of the film?
And so my experience is coming from a slightly different place, which is that I've seen this director's work before.
Right.
I'm a big fan of his work.
Sure.
One thing about Roy Andersson is, he's a prolific filmmaker, but he's also an amazing commercial director. And if you could go on the web, look at his commercials, they're hysterical. They're really worth watching. So I kind of knew what I was in for.
Right.
And having A Pigeon Sat on a Branch, Reflecting on Existence, is the third of a trilogy of films, and I've seen the other two. The first is Songs from the Second Floor, that film I told you I went into completely blind. The second was a film called You the Living, which is, again, following the same theme of absurdity of life, and all three films are kind of like, they feel to me like they take place in some sort of purgatory where past, present, future collide into some sort of odd, nether realm.
Wait. If this is the third film, am I walking into this like someone who hasn't seen a Marvel movie going to see Avengers? Like, did I miss a big point here? Like, who the hell is that sea captain?
No.
Turned barber.
You don't need to see these films in any order. They're not connected. They're only connected thematically.
So would you say, and I'm going to go highbrow, lowbrow here.
Yeah.
This is the highbrow equivalent to the, Cornetto trilogy?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good. That's a really good comparison.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Well, in a highbrow, lowbrow way. The other film I was going to mention, maybe in a trilogy, although not in the same way, was Krzysztof Kieslowski's Red, White, and Blue trilogy, or even his other short film about love, a short film about death.
Okay.
Yeah, or he has a whole other trilogy of films that are based on Bible stories, which I'm going completely blank on.
That's
right
fine.
Now. But so they're thematically connected, they're stylistically connected, but they're not story connected. You don't need to stay through the credits to see what's going to happen in the next film.
Good.
So this is the third part of the trilogy. I have to say, I adored Songs from the Second Floor. I liked You the Living a little bit less. I went in very, very high expectations on that one. I went in with possibly lower expectations this time around. But there's this funny thing when you take someone to a movie that you love, you're always kind of like looking over your shoulder going, geez, I hope they like this movie. Otherwise, they might not like me anymore. Yeah. And I'm gathering from now, I'm never getting to pick the movie again.
No, of course you can, dude. Look. As much as I tolerated this film, and not even tolerate, there's parts of it I really liked, and we'll get into it.
Yeah.
it's good. It's good to see different stuff. Like we said, if we went to see Entourage, we would have known exactly what. I've watched 6 seasons of Entourage. This isn't going to be different. This is just going to be updated. Do I still want to see that? Yes, I love mac and cheese.
We all love a good cheeseburger.
But every once in a while, you like to try a new restaurant, and this was definitely a new restaurant. This is the if Sleep No More in New York City served food, this would be that restaurant.
Yeah. It's definitely a different experience, but it's. I think it's something pretty interesting, and like it's a film that makes you think about life,
right?
And if you're willing to give it the time, it really has a lot to say. Because, like I would say, I heard this old saying that a screenplay is not in the words that are on the page; it's in the space that's around the words. Like the blank space around the words is really where the screenplay is.
Okay.
And the idea there is that it's not what's said; it's what's not said. And how much a film lets you think on your, gives you just enough to start you thinking.
See, now we're getting into stuff that I sort of disagree with.
Well, we can disagree a lot. But let me finish.
Sure,
My point here is that this is a film that is about the absurdity of life and the prospect of what death could offer you, and it gives you basically the broad strokes of ideas, and it gives you a lot of absurd ideas, almost in a Monty Python kind of way. It takes death to its most absurd limits.
Of course, it's Monty Python-esque, but with like 20% of the comedy. Let's not. There's funny moments in it. There's chuckle-worthy moments, but you won't have a belly laugh in this film.
Although there was one gentleman behind us who was he
was loving it.
He enjoyed every minute. And I have to admit, when I saw Songs from the Second Floor for the first time, I did belly laugh. There are definitely funnier sequences in Songs from the Second Floor.
Well, you didn't take me to that movie, Shahir.
For example, in Songs from the Second Floor, there's a scene where a magician is performing the sawing a person in half act.
Okay.
And it goes the worst possible way, and we follow the character who gets cut.
Oh, that's awesome.
Throughout the rest of the film, and it's hysterical. It's great. This doesn't quite have that. I think this has got a more somber tone to it. It's a lot darker than the other two films.
So before we sort of get into, we've just sort of said what we think generally of the movie. Now, chances are you probably haven't seen this film, and you're probably like, I still have no clue what it's about, or what it's even, trying to say, or what it could even mean altogether. So we did something a little different at Shahir's behest. Shahir whipped out his microphone, not that other thing he normally does at movie theaters.
And get comfortable.
And we asked some people some questions on the street after the fact. They shall remain nameless, but we're gonna play that for you right now. Just sort of what other people thought of the good old fashioned a pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on existence. Here we go. Here's regular people.
Well, it was about life. I think it was very funny. I was very impressed about the art direction and the framing and composition and everything, but also sometimes I was laughing at things that it made me think, this is actually kind of sad what's going on right now, but it was, I don't know, it brought a smile to me.
It seemed to be about missed chances, missed connections, really, to a large degree. And Cruelty of the Past was much more organized than Cruelty in the Present.
It was pretty amazing. I was super engaged the whole time, and I was thinking about it from a structural point of view, like how's this made? And it's like pretty incredible. Like I want to watch it again to try to figure out how it's made. But I was thinking about the Maisel brothers, The Salesman, which is like one of the first documentaries, and about how that's this profound sort of journey into failure, like the salesman who's not a good salesman. And I think this film references that a number of times. Like I was thinking about how like the creation of art comes out of pain, right? Like good art is someone's pain sort of like made into something beautiful. And I felt like that was like another part of what was being said.
There were many funny parts. There were also kind of depressing parts. I guess it's sort of, you have to look at life with a sense of humor or else it's going to be dreadfully depressing.
So first up, I just want to say thank you to everyone who talked to us after the screening. I know it's a hard thing to do to like get a microphone in your face and say, like, what did you think of the movie or what was it about?
Put yourself on the line.
But just thank you to everybody there.
Thanks, guys and girls. So here's what I gathered from that. little snippet. This movie could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And something, again, that what is traditionally known as sort of art house cinema is very good at is being abstract with what it sort of means or whatnot. Now, or maybe so much as the filmmaker wants you to feel a bunch of different things and is basically, in this case, it's so weird to say this, but like is throwing a lot at a wall and hoping some sticks. In a sense, like, one of the gentlemen was saying how, he thought things were funny, but then he felt uncomfortable that he thought things were funny. And one dude focused on what I would consider the two main characters of the film, the two salesmen that you see throughout the picture. Actually, it's funny, he's called them bad salesmen. I didn't ever think they were bad salesmen. It's because the tone of the film, just real quick, like no one speaks fast, no one is smiling, it's very somber and very sort of like this is what's happening now, and we'll keep talking like this. Actually, some people smile in some of the musical. There's a musical number, but I never thought of them as failures. I actually just thought they were going ups and downs because in some parts they were talking to people that they had sold things to, and in other parts they were talking to people that they couldn't sell to, although they always had money problems. I don't know.
So, well, this is where I'm going to disagree with you to right off the bat, which is I think you're referring to this film as like someone trying to throw things at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like you even mentioned at the beginning that this is a masterfully made film,
right?
And I think this is exactly the film that this director wanted to make, which is that it is an open discussion about life and absurdity, and it's structured in the exact way he wants it to
right
be.
Well, a film can't be a discussion, though.
I think this film provokes discussion in
yes
the way
no film always provokes discussion. Yeah. That's why we're here. Hi, we're doing a podcast. But I'm sorry, continue your thought.
No, I think this is a very purposefully made film. This is not a guy, like if you're in Hollywood, you're not looking at Roy Andersson's film and going, I wonder if he could direct an Avengers movie. This is a guy who makes these kinds of films, and he is the only person that makes these kinds of films.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, if you're looking for a Hollywood contemporary, the only person that comes to mind, and it's cliche to say right away, but is like that later Stanley Kubrick, like the much later Stanley Kubrick.
Wes Anderson. He tries to hit this. I don't think he does.
I think Wes Anderson is much more commercially driven than this film ever will.
Sure, no, I'll agree with that.
And I think late Stanley Kubrick is probably closer to like 2001: A Space Odyssey, or even Barry Lyndon, or something like that. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about this the other day because the kind of humor that's in Songs from the Second Floor, and maybe a little bit less so in this film, really does remind me of Dr. Strangelove a little bit. It is about people. It's about uncomfortable humor, people doing something that is funny only in its droll and dry and unfunny approach. And I was thinking that if Stanley Kubrick was alive today, I think he would find this pretty funny because it is in the same. The comedy is reflective of the way human beings are, have an ability to fail, and I think that's what's funny about it. He has like an overall view of human beings.
Right. So this is sort of I don't particularly disagree with any one thing you're saying. When I throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, there are definitely deliberate things being said by the man. That's not the question. But when you have such a broad sort of topic of, this is about the absurdity of life. Okay. That to me says, I'm going to not even that. Let me back up a bit. There are certain vignettes in this thing that I'm like, oh, this is what he's trying to say. This is how he's doing it, and it's all very done well. And then there's some that's just like filler. That sort of made me sort of I haven't seen a film in such a long time that I lost interest in and gained interest in back and forth throughout. Like there was parts where I was looking at my watch, but then there was parts that I was completely engrossed, and it wasn't following specific characters and it wasn't doing whatever, but just certain ones of the vignettes really worked and didn't work for me. And I think some of them he had a really strong thing, and another one he's like, this is just a really pretty human moment. I'm going to let them think what they want. But that to me doesn't, with the strength of sort of his message from the other ones, then it's just like, oh, slice of life. And I'm just like, I don't give a fuck. Like,
it's funny because I found that, and listen, before we go on as well, I actually don't disagree with you that the film was a difficult watch, and it did, like again, I wasn't as engaged as I was with Songs from the Second Floor. And I could argue, like, you could take scenes from Songs from the Second Floor and throw them into the middle of this film, and it would feel
you wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't tell the difference. So when I say I love Songs from the Second Floor, I think I love the scenes that were in Songs from the Second Floor more than some of the scenes that were in this film. And I agree, there are a couple of scenes where, people are just like lying on a beach with a dog behind them, like looking
just copping a feel.
Just copping a feel, looking like they're about to have sex, and then that's it. But I found in this film what I liked about those scenes is that every other scene seemed to be about death, and those scenes seemed to be about life. And that's, like when I was watching the film in its totality, that's what I felt when I watched them. That it was like, oh, this is a beautiful moment of life being lived, of things, of the possibility of life. Whereas every other scene seemed to be about the approaching of death.
I agree that those were the short ones were sort of the more life sort of full ones. I don't think every other scene was about death. I think there's a sequence. Oh, by the way, if you haven't seen this, now is the time where we're just going to keep spoiling. But I don't even know if you can spoil this thing. I mean, I'm going to talk about scenes, but it's so it's not even abstract's the wrong word. It's so non-linear almost and not cohesive in a
story way.
In a story way that spoiling this would be difficult.
It's like if we were going to have a discussion about Eraserhead, you would tell everything that happens in Eraserhead.
Right. Yeah. So there's a sequence of vignettes that they keep calling back to, sometimes crossing characters in and out, that you've seen or not seen, whatever. Where it's a series of people on the phone in various states of emotion saying the same line of, "Well, I'm really glad to hear you're doing fine," or something along those lines.
What I love about sorry.
So that's over and over and over and over again. I think it might happen like 6 times or maybe 7. If it happened less, it felt like more. And those didn't grab me as much because that to me really sort of like was like, oh, this is your callback gag you're doing.
Yeah.
And it was funny like the second or the third time. And then after the situation sort of got more and more ridiculous, I just didn't care anymore. Like he already made his point of, and this is what I think his sort of point is in that, is that like we talk to people in our lives, every day that, we say sort of pleasantries and we don't really give a fuck about, and we're like, well, whatever. And we could be doing anything, which is sort of not really paying attention to what the other person's saying or feeling. We're like, well, no, I'm just glad you're doing okay. That's great. Okay, cool. Like I get that, but I got it beforehand. Like I don't need to keep seeing it. I don't need to see a rich dude in like a mahogany office all of a sudden like holding a gun on the phone doing. Then nothing happens. Just nothing happens.
But to me, that scene was kind of like every time we saw it, we were basically seeing the other side of that conversation in different ways and forms. So. The first time we see that person, we see a woman basically scrubbing the floor, saying, "Oh, it's nice to hear that you're doing fine."
Well, she's off. She's crying. She sounds off. She sounds sad.
And then the next time we see it, we see this. This sounds so again like every film we've talked about so far. The second you try to describe the plot, you sound like a crazy person. But we see a captain, a sailboat. A ferry ship captain who's had a passenger die, who's decided to become a barber. Pick up the phone and say, "Oh, it's nice to hear that you're doing fine." And it feels like these two people are talking to each other.
Oh no, I didn't feel like that at all.
Because we cut to another woman later on
but they're all just saying, "I'm glad you're doing fine." It'd be very weird.
And then eventually we see, the man with the mahogany, in the mahogany room with the gun, and I felt like he was the guy that if you didn't make that phone call that day, he would have killed himself. And it was just like, it reminded me of like sometimes the conversations you have where you're like, you got to call this person and you don't really want to sometimes. Right. And, but you have to do it. And so it kind of reminded me of that. And, I agree with you. Sometimes the jokes go on a little long in this film.
You know what it was? Here's the deal. Because I'm a fan of beating the horse to death.
Yeah.
But I think he while he was masterful in a lot of things, I think the beating the horse to death part of his humor, his timing is off in the sense of, if you're going to do this, do it. Because the joke was funny and then it sank. And what is supposed to happen when you beat a dead horse is you keep beating it and beating it and beating it and beating it and beating it until it's funny again. He, for probably length reasons or time or other things he wanted to say, never built it back up for me to be funny again.
That's a pretty good accurate analysis. I think that joke in particular, it starts out strange.
Yep.
It gets funny. Then
second or third one's funny.
Then it gets like annoying, and then it doesn't quite. It need maybe one more beat for that joke to really.
A couple more beats, I think,
and more absurd.
And also because the last one, I think, or the last one I remember anyway, that sort of told me, oh, you're not supposed to be laughing at this.
Yeah.
Is the monkey scene. There's a scene where it's a scientist with a monkey strapped to this metal thing with electrodes in its head, and it's electrocuting it on a timer. Now, granted, it was an animatronic monkey, but it looked pretty damn good. And she's just doing the whole, well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing fine, and the monkey's just. And that was honestly, and there's two disturbing scenes in the film, and that was that was hard to watch.
It was uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable scene to watch, but funny at the same, uncomfortably funny.
Yeah, but I think that at the end was starting to. It was trying to make more of a statement and less of a comedy, than the joke failed. I don't know.
My one forgiving, my one ration, and I agree with you. I think it kind of didn't play to it's a Friday night. I'm tired. I need this to land kind of moments. Maybe if I caught that in a matinee or something, I might have really thought about it. But my one thing is that this is a director who does understand comedy very well. If you watch his commercials,
there's no doubt he's funny.
They land like you wouldn't believe.
And this one just didn't for me.
Well, and I think maybe the thing to think about is that this is a guy who's made a lot of commercials in his life. Has made a lot of short films and that sort of thing. That his feature films aren't the place for him to tell jokes. His jokes are gonna have more depth to them or be less funny and more contemplative than they are, than they are going to be just ha ha ha,
Yeah, but then at the same time, comedy.
And this is your first experience with him, so maybe if I'd shown you his commercials beforehand.
Maybe, but here's the deal. I liked going into it cold, which none of you listening, if you're going to go watch it, you're not going to go in cold now.
Yeah.
But let's, I could nitpick what I didn't like about it, and that's all personal nonsense. Again, like I said, I think it's a very masterfully crafted film, and I'd actually like to get into talking about one of the things I really enjoyed about it, which was the art direction of the film.
Yeah.
So let's get into that right now. We're going to start with more man on the street, woman on the street sometimes, stuff about this film. Apso Abaran, I believe. A pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on existence. Here's what people thought about the look.
I mean, I was thinking stylistically, like the vision and it's like a Wes Anderson kind of, so stylistically shot and created. It kind of reminded me of the kind of worlds he creates, but it just felt like a Swedish, I lived in Sweden for a little while, and it felt true to that as a place and to that.
I was saying before, it reminded me of dioramas. When you're in third grade and you've got the shoebox and you make something where you could look around because everything was in focus, and it all had that kind of cardboard lack of life, lack of color kind of look. It also seems to be something an antique thing that was discovered in someone's attic. Look, it's 80 years old. No one's seen it. Well, what is it?
The movie visually reminded me very much of Edward and the mood of Edward Hopper paintings. Very geometric, very lonely, all these closed doors. And it set the same kind of mood as a lot of Hopper pictures, including, his street scenes. They're just kind of empty and desolate. That people occupy these spaces, but there's kind of also nobody there. It's a weird feeling.
I remember when I saw Songs for the Second Floor and then I went back and watched all those commercials, all of Roy Andersson's work looks like these, which is that they're, like as someone described it, they're like live dioramas.
Sure.
They have that kind of art-directed storybook quality to them. But the other thing that I love about his work is that this depth of field that he creates. Like in single shots, you'll see all the way back down. Like sometimes in Songs from the Second Floor, there's this one striking shot where you can see almost a mile down the street.
Yeah.
And there's a gag where like something is happening a mile down the street that reflects upon what's happening in the foreground.
Okay.
And it like travels all the way across the scene.
Yeah.
And he uses like the entire 3 dimensions. And I always think of Wes Anderson as a 2-dimensional filmmaker.
Very much so.
And that's not meant to be pejorative or a negative thing. That's just his work.
Pejorative.
He looks like he's
let's keep it to 3-point words here.
He looks like he's making work that is very flat, but it's just his storybook theater driven style. Now, Roy Andersson makes work that look like they're done in 3-point perspective.
Right.
They're very like you can see all the way out to the horizon line.
Sure.
And the one thing that I've been researching about his work is that it's so meticulously crafted. Because if you think about the way a camera shoots depth of field, you need to like have the camera stopped all the way down.
Yeah.
So you need so much light to be
Yeah.
able to see down there. And what you think that this film, what these scenes are, is that they're just beautifully lit and shot. They're actually entirely constructed sets.
Yeah.
Like the
Well,
thing,
except for some of the exteriors, but
and in fact, in those exteriors, the far distance will be a painting.
oh wow, okay,
And that's how you'll do, and it'll actually be created on a set. And
That's great.
And it's all beautifully constructed and well thought out. And I actually I love looking at Roy Andersson's work.
Well, here's the deal with Roy Andersson. This is what I'm going to say. And Roy Andersson, if you ever listen to this podcast, I want you to listen to this noise. That's me cracking a beer to you, sir, because you have proven something with this film that I have been arguing with certain people for a very long time. And it's on your soul depth of field thing you said, Shahir. Mr. Andersson, you have proved, or should I say Mr. Andersson?
I'm sure he's a fan of The Matrix.
Yeah, you have proved that film was already a 3D medium. We don't need stupid fucking glasses.
Yeah.
We don't need gimmicks flying out at our face unless we're at Universal Studios. This film was a completely shot in 3D film. And I don't mean what everyone else means when they say that. You go to this and you see depth. You see the third dimension.
And it's immersive as
And
well.
it's totally immersive. It is like you're looking inside of a diorama.
And it's yeah.
And it's beautifully bleak. I like how the older a character, this is more of a makeup thing, but
Yeah.
I'm sort of getting off
Every
thing.
character,
but,
yeah.
And the older a character was, the more white cake makeup was on their face.
They look like death. Or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
And you got a real sense of like where these people were and what time period in their life was going on based on the bleakness of it. And that was something that was very interesting to me because, you look back at your life so far, and I feel like I do, and I think everyone does, the whole nostalgia thing. I mean, Don Draper said it best. It's like that nostalgia is that place you're aching to go, again, I should say. And you look back at your life, you're like, man, my life was awesome back then, when your life is probably pretty good right now. And you always are looking back, trying to see. I mean, I know some people always sort of look forward, but that's not the sort of thing I'm talking about. It's just, this film did a very good job of showing you at what point in your life most people will feel the best and the worst.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, completely.
So anyway, along with that and the 3D-ness of it without being gimmick 3D, Mr. Andersson, cheers to you, buddy. That was some good shit.
And in addition to that, I also really like the way he uses the space. Like you'll see something.
There's stuff going on way the other side a lot of
Yeah.
times, and it's really fun.
Yeah, and it'll be like like you'll see a couple fighting in the background where a
Right.
guy in the foreground is trying to like find his way to a restaurant, and then there's this couple that you've seen in other scenes are having a fight and they're breaking up.
Yeah.
and it's this great play on space as well. Like he really does use, as you say, the full 3 dimensions of space.
Right. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that's what that's what kept bringing me back to the times when I was getting pulled out. It wasn't necessarily the story or the minor story or the characters or thinking, what does it all mean? Whatever. It was the way the film looked. If you like pretty cinema and if you like well thought out, meticulous sort of set driven or art direction or anything like that, this is a film you will really enjoy.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you don't particularly need a story.
It'd be interesting, like in the way that maybe the story kind of turned you off. Imagine if Wes Anderson made a film that looked like this and played with depth like this with one of his stories, or some other filmmaker,
Maybe, I don't know.
Imagine a war film that had this look.
Sure.
I guess you could argue that Full Metal Jacket might be
kind of,
bad,
but there's something to be said about no camera movement. It really makes it feel like you're not experiencing something.
Yeah.
You not in the same way that you would experience. So, like, film is a lot of times about immersion, and it's trying to make you feel like you're a character or you're there to make you emotionally involved in it, and therefore enjoy the experience of watching it, or at least feel what the person making it wants you to feel. This is different. You're not experiencing it. You're completely and utterly just being an observer into it.
It's funny as well because the rules, like when you get taught the rules of cinema, you get taught that there's this language that creates like a connected reality that works.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a film that kind of just doesn't even, we don't, there's no cutaway, there's no overhead, there's no like shot, reverse shot or anything.
Yeah.
The whole conversations happen in one single frame. Yeah. And it's completely immersive and it completely works, it goes to show that the things you get taught in film school aren't necessarily true, if you are a good craftsperson and you think about your art.
But then here's the flip side of that, I'll say. The art direction for me saved this film, but a film overall is a sort of collaborative process that if you want it to be in my opinion, if you want it to be a phenomenal film, all of these things have to come together and affect the person that is watching it. For me, it was only one or two things done very, very well.
Yeah.
To do that now, and you can't, it's not fair to say like, well, what if this film was shot like a different one? Well, it wasn't, dummy, me. So like that's unfair to say. But at the same time, when I think back to like a film that I truly, really enjoy, all of the things come together for me.
Well, I guess, the other side of it is, like I've talked a lot about Songs from the Second Floor, and Songs from the Second Floor has a couple of very, very powerful scenes that have like stayed with me and will stay with me for the rest of my life. And then there's one scene in Songs from the Second Floor where they have camera movement, and it's a really powerful use of camera movement where a scene, like something that was still was set upon a train tracks and suddenly we move away as another character changes. And I think that was pretty powerfully handled. But this film, A Pigeon Sat on a Branch reflecting on its existence.
Use the anagram.
What is it? Asabarubbery?
Apso-abron.
The Pigeon film has, I think, probably the most powerful scene that he's ever filmed. And there's one scene in particular.
Which one? Oh, that one.
You know the one.
Yeah.
Which is just, it works on so many levels. It begins as devastating. It turns into horrific. It becomes kind of funny. And then it becomes hauntingly beautiful. And then somewhat depressing. Depressing's not the right word, but it makes you look at yourself in a sort of depressing way. I just felt so much transformation in that scene as it progressed on.
Right.
Shall we describe the scene?
Yeah. Because look, I normally this is a joke, but we are the only Pigeon Sat on a Branch reflecting on existence podcast. Like, I'll put money on that. So obviously we have to tell you about the quintessential scene.
This to me, this scene is worth the price of admission.
So let's see if I can do it. So there are. Sweet. Now, I actually read what this scene is supposed to represent.
Okay.
But
tell me, because I don't know.
I'll describe it first, and then I'll say it. So there's a bunch of white dudes in safari getups, pushing a bunch of African American people into a giant cylinder.
Are they African Americans, or were they slaves from another country? I mean,
maybe
was
I don't know.
European.
It could have been
slaves.
Slaves.
Yeah.
They're pushing slaves into this giant metal cylinder with all these horns on it. And they put them in, and then they lock it up. This is men, women, children, and they're whipping them and getting them in there. And then they throw a torch into a pit that this thing is hanging over, and it lights up what must be a big oil pit on fire. And because the heat of the fire is so hot, the slaves inside, which you never see inside, mind you, this is all an exterior shooting this, must try to move up the walls of this cylinder to get away from the heat. And therefore, it starts turning this giant cylinder, which turns out to be a form of a music box because of all the horns on it. And it starts playing like this deep sort of tonal music. And then, in the closest thing to a camera move this film does, it sort of flips to the 180 side, cuts to the 180 side. It's the reflection of the thing turning, and you see doors open, and it's these white elderly people walking out and like watching it as entertainment.
Yeah.
And then you see a character that you've seen before serving drinks, and that he sort of helps tie it all back together. That's not really the important part. And you can read a lot into this. What I read, and I'm going to butcher this, was it's actually... So while it turns, you see a name, Borelli or Beldi or something.
What does
so
that mean?
That is a mining company in Sweden. And
Wow.
apparently there's a time and a place where this mining company just kept using slaves and throwing them into mining stuff, and they kept dying.
Wow. That's
So
amazing.
this is his callback to that.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's haunting and horrifying, but like at the same time, it's very purposely. They're the only people of color in the entire film are these slaves being thrown into this giant music box powered by heat and fire, and it's terribly disturbing, and it's odd to me. There's a lot of things you can glean from it in the sense of. I mean, you can take that and this whole Swedish slavery mining thing, but you can put it to any oppressed people that had a oppressor benefit off of the oppression.
It also it made me think about the way in, on a meta level, the way in which someone, like pain, all great art is someone else's pain. Not necessarily someone else, like there's that adage that like comedy is
Pain plus time or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And this kind of just made me, because there's a point where the oppressors, the sort of safari wearing, I'm guessing they're Swedish people, now look directly at the camera as this big musical tube spins, and it produces this beautiful sound. It's like an incredibly beautiful sound. And I was thinking about like the sort of slightly tumultuous relationship people had with 12 Years a Slave, which was like this, I think a pretty masterful film about slavery.
Right.
But, there's this sort of question mark around whether it exploits what happened to African American slaves in order to derive entertainment. And that's what this musical box in the film is it's using pain to derive entertainment and beautiful entertainment and art.
I even took it in a sort of sidestep of that, in a sense. I know this wasn't what it was meant for. I knew there was a bigger meaning, especially when the name of a whatever came
I
across.
knew that
Right.
the name meant something, but I didn't know what it was.
I was taking it as almost like the music industry, because it was a big thing of music. Like you take artists, and you run them through this barrage of like horror and whatever to sort of get their art out.
Obviously, because they used the name of the mining company, it's a very direct indictment of that particular company.
Yeah.
But I think, because we don't know that history, we were able to extrapolate it into a much broader story.
Right. I mean, but it's oppressor versus oppressee or oppressed, I guess. And it's the hallmark of this film. Like, and it's interesting because you know what's interesting about it? It's the most powerful scene, but maybe you can convince me otherwise, and I'd love it if you could. It also felt the most disconnected from all of the other scenes, even though it had a character from the other scenes in it.
I think to me, the way it tied together was that, as well as being this like giant tube that spins, what the other character seems to be struggling with was the absurdity of his job. You know, like he's this salesperson who like goes out and sells these things, and he's trying to help people, but he's not funny and he's not that interested in humor.
Sure.
And it's this sort of weird,
He's selling humorous things, by the way. He's
Yeah.
selling like gag jokes.
vampire teeth.
Vampire teeth, a bag of laughs, and the one-toothed uncle rubber mask is his 3 products.
But you know, like that kind of reminds me, you know, like sometimes in everyone's worst moments when they're working a job, you often sit back and think, this is nuts. You know, like I'm very fortunate, which is that I get to do what I love. But there are certain days where I'm like, this is just a grind.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I can imagine I can extrapolate for other people that are doing jobs that they don't love, that it is a grind. It's like, I'm going to work every day, killing myself slowly in order to stay alive.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that this thing turns in order to keep people alive, you know, it seemed to reflect on this guy's existential dilemma. And he, you know, like ostensibly the film suggests that this is a dream, you know, that he has. He actually comes out and says, you know, I just had the most awful dream.
Right,
and
but
then
in this film, keep in mind, that could mean anything.
yeah, anything could be a dream in
Yeah.
this film. And then he walks down the hallway shouting, is it appropriate to derive pleasure from other people's pain? Or, you know, words to that effect. And I think, you know, like when I think about work as well, you know, like, and the way that the you know, like they were the oil barons of the time are kind of deriving just pure pleasure from other people's pain. Is it appropriate? And sometimes when I think about work, I think about it in those terms, you know, like, again, I'm very lucky and
Yeah.
I get to do, you know, I get to work in the field that I love, but you know,
Well,
we kill ourselves for our jobs sometimes.
right, but and then there's also sort of the killing ourselves versus physically killing ourselves, in the sense of like every time I'm having a bad day, I look back and I go, well, at least I'm not roofing anymore.
Yeah.
Like, but even beyond that, like the whole deriving pleasure from someone else's pain, you have to. What that scene made me really think about by the end of it, when he's yelling that down the hall, was kind of like, and this is a weird sort of thing, and I don't think he meant it this deep, but like the fact that we were all in a movie theater,
Yeah.
sitting and watching this film. If you go back, it's on the backs of a lot of people's misery that we are able to do that.
I was actually reading an article in Variety just this week about the punishing hours of film production.
Well, not even film production. I'm talking about like let's talk about like things, for instance, and this might be smaller scale, large scale, but like let's go with the technology that allowed us to get to go see that film. Like I'm gonna reach real quick, and then we got to move on because
Yeah.
we have a couple more things to talk about. I'm talking about like what that made me think of was like, wow, getting me here took a lot of anguish from people, like even the film and the whatever. But then let's talk about the projector and how that was made. It was probably made in a third world country somewhere where parts are super cheap. And then even the phones that we were texting about going to, like every little convenience we have, the water we have, you know, food, all that stuff was made by people that probably have harder lives than we do.
Are you a fan of Louis C.K.?
Yeah.
Have you one of his latest HBO specials? He ends it with what I think is a genius monologue. It's called I call it the "but maybe" monologue, and the "but maybe" monologue goes something along the lines. This is the terrible thing. Where
No,
like
please
you're trying to tell,
be as funny as Louis C.K.
Yeah,
for
be as
me.
funny as Louis C.K. But he, you know, like I think he has something in there like it's terrible when a soldier gets shot in war, but maybe if you're being shot at and you are firing upon someone, it's half your fault.
Right. No, I've heard this. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's another one in there, which is that, you know, like it's terrible that slaves are being exploited all over the world, but maybe most of humankind's greatest inventions come off the back of slavery.
Yeah.
Slavery. So, you know, it's that kind of like, it's one of those great jokes that makes you think about humanity.
Yeah. And this scene makes you think about humanity. That's kind of what it is.
And, you know, like for all our difficulty with the story or our difficulty with, like, you know, fully engaging with this film, this scene has probably provoked more discussion, you know, on a philosophical level.
Sure.
Than either of the, I was going to say, than any other film we've talked about, knowing very well that we've only talked about two other films.
Yeah, well, whoops. No, I agree. And one day maybe we'll review. Maybe the fourth film we review will have a more thought-provoking scene.
But also I think this particular scene is so good and so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, like the most thought-provoking scene I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. But again, I do have to go back to it felt for me very out of
Unconnected.
place and unconnected. But that didn't mean it wasn't good. It was, whatever.
If the scene, if this was a web series and this was the first episode was just this scene,
Oh my God.
you might forward it to a million people.
Holy crap. All right, so that's sort of what we were getting into with the sort of look and feel of the film. Now let's talk about the biggest elephant in the room, I feel, which is, so we've talked about it, we've told you about it. This is what we asked people. We asked them if they would recommend it to see it this weekend, as opposed to, say, your Entourages or your Spies or what have you.
I would love to see the box office mojo report for this film.
Oh my
versus-
God. All right, let's listen to what the people had to say.
I think it is very special. So they have to try.
Yes, I would. I think that it's very thought-provoking, and it's also conversation-provoking.
I would definitely recommend people seeing this, but they might hate me if I did.
That's a damn good point. That's a damn good point.
Well, it leads to a broader conversation about the purpose of cinema in our lives. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine.
It was me. It wasn't.
It was one of those college room conversations where we were talking about how, like, when I got home at night, I wanted to see films that challenged me, that made me think.
Okay,
But
so
now-
hold on.
but-
No, hold on.
what-
No, it's
I
a
was
college conversation. It's a college, so you have to
Okay.
be like, it has to be this. Ready?
Yeah. Bruh.
When I
Bruh.
when I get home, I want to like watch films that like challenge like the way I think.
Oh my God, you're right.
Sorry, continue. So
I was gonna say, have you seen The Cat?
yeah, fuck.
But I would always say that, and that's an obnoxious thing to say. And this other
Yeah.
person, this other person I was talking to was like, yeah, but sometimes I want to come home and I just want to watch like something dumb and stupid because I'm tired.
This sounds like me. Did we have this conversation?
And the funny thing is, the older I've gotten, the more I've been working. Like my Netflix queue is 400 films deep. And it has a lot of movies like Songs from the Second Floor on it.
Sure.
That I never clear off because I'll come home, I'll be real tired, and I'll be like, I just want to watch an episode of Family Guy.
Yeah.
And like tonight, I struggled through this film. I was like, I've done a full day today. I'm like, I've got a lot of things in my
It's a
mind.
lot of work.
I'm really tired. And then, but
Oh, this entertainment is making me think.
yeah, exactly. But the thing is that if all cinema was this thought-provoking and tried to like
Right.
really, would the world be a better place?
No.
No?
I don't even know if you know this, Shahir, but I was a counselor at a film, video, photo, and computer arts summer camp called the NISA program. It's a great program for kids in New York State. Basically, it takes the most talented artists in those fields, and it might have even expanded by now. This was in college. I did this. And it makes them... it's a month-long course that you bring these kids. I think they're between the ages of like even 14 to 18. Like it's high school range kids. And they go and they live in a college dorm for a month. And each day they have classes taught by insanely talented teachers. And then we have guest speakers every night that came in and spoke about everything. And it was some of the most interesting, thought-provoking art stuff that I've ever watched or experienced. And these kids so gifted, and they're all like my kids that were like my campers, as it were they're doing amazing things right now in film, video, and photo. Like it's nuts the things they're doing. But my point was this. I got into a very large argument with one of my favorite professors, Bob Harris, at my college. Bob Harris and I got into a bit of an argument because at nighttime sometimes after the kids had finished all their work, I would sneak them all into the movie theater that we had at the campus that we were on, and we would watch Gymkata. We would watch Wet Hot American Summer. We would watch Ninja Turtles. And he and I butted heads. He's like, this is an art school. We're supposed to be teaching them about stuff. We're supposed to be teaching them about great cinema. And then I got into the whole thing. I'm like, well, what is art? Because I was a college student. I thought I knew what the fuck I was talking about. But the bigger question is, and this is my answer, and I think what you said is very, very true to this. It's you cannot have thought-provoking shit thrown at you all the damn time, because if you do, you will come to resent being provoked for thought. Like, you need sugar bullshit so you can better appreciate the stuff that will make you think. And it's not to say that sometimes they can't match.
Yeah, I think that's true. I certainly agree with that. We can't have caviar all every day. We need to have a cheeseburger every now and again.
Right.
Not that
So
caviar.
many analogies.
Yeah. But I think as well that there is a tendency, or there is at least recently a tendency for films to. I'm starting to feel like a lot of movies are making me dumber. You know, like not purposely making me dumber, but are making me think so little to an extent, and deadening me with so much. You know, like
That's on you.
that. Maybe it is on me. You know, but they're deadening me with like just huge, loud explosions and sexy women and people dying by guns and bullets, and it's like, is it doing any good to me to watch
That brings up a very interesting question. So let's talk about this film, A Pigeon Sat on a Branch Reflecting on Existence, or Entourage. Let's talk about sort of the dichotomy between that, because think about it this way. They're both, honestly, and I believe this statement intrinsically, and you can argue it till the cows come home. I don't think it's going to change my mind. They are both about the human experience. They are. But here's the difference. One is the human experience that we sort of see in the media that everyone sort of wants to attain them, like the sort of like on a animalistic level, they want sort of that.
Yeah.
And one is the deeper emotional level, that comes to when you actually reflect on yourself as a person and you have Ari Gold as a boss. No, but do you know what I mean? So like they are both truly about the human experience. Now, one is more relatable because more people can relate to wanting a certain thing because that's easier. That's the sort of easy path. And the other is obviously not. But then now
I've lost which one's which.
I know, right? See? No. So you're going to need another beer for this, because which one is more true of humanity?
This is but then I think the extension of what you're saying is that every film is about the human experience.
No, I'm saying this film we just watched and the Entourage movie are both about the human experience. I mean, yes, you can broaden it, but that's not what I'm saying. They're both about what humans feel and want.
Right. I mean, I have to be honest. I've seen one season of Entourage many years ago, and I never went back to it. I think Entourage. I think when I saw the trailer for the Entourage film, I thought, oh, that looks like fun. And if I knew these characters really well, I'd probably enjoy that. Mm-hmm. But also, the other part of me thought, this is Sex and the City for guys, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you think Sex and the City was good for people? The movies, just at least.
I think this is what I'll say. I'm going to bring it back to Entourage.
Is Sex and the City about the human experience?
Kinda, but again, it's about the human experience that we think we want, or we know we think we want. I don't know, whatever. This is what I'll say. I think the Entourage film will make people happier than this film will make them.
Sure.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's better.
Yeah, that's like saying eating a bowl of sugar is going to make people happier than a bowl of kale.
Sure. So, but what I'm saying is, I just wonder, as a species, where we are today, what is more reflective of the true human experience? I don't know.
No, I don't. No, and it's obnoxious of me to suggest in any way, shape, or form that we should all be watching a pigeon, sat on a branch reflecting existence or films like that every night. But I think, it would have been, the great thing is that you did agree to do it. I'm very impressed by that. And I'm impressed that you indulged me.
I'm not a monster.
because I did have that experience when we were watching it, which was like, oh God, he hates it. He's gonna think
there was great aspects. And look, we're running out of time. Thanks for suggesting it. We needed something different. And to be completely honest, whether or not whatever film is more, reflective of the human existence, this is a much more interesting film to discuss, I feel like, than Entourage. Because otherwise we're just going to be talking about, oh man, when Drama banged that chick, dude, it was so fucking funny. Like, who gives a shit? So, in summation, just real quick, even though this wasn't my cup of tea, I think anyone who can appreciate sort of the beauty and the visual aspects of film. And actually, there was some great sound design in this movie too. Then the music was very, very catchy. But I think people like our friends on the street said should challenge themselves to go see it, because it is something that, even if you don't like 80% of it, I guarantee anyone that sees this film will like 20% of it. and that's a hard sell. No, but
That's
think
a
about
low
that.
margin.
But but also in that 20% is going to make you think more than most other films will make you think. And that, I think, is lots of things.
Lots of thinking.
I think is important, and I think we need a break from the mac and cheese from time to time.
Exactly. And that was my point, was that I think, I would happily watch Entourage, and
I'm going to see it Sunday, by the way.
yeah, and I would happily watch it, but I want this podcast, the only podcast about movies,
Right, because
to not just be about what's playing, in the multiplex, about what's got the most screens.
right. But chances are next week we'll probably do a bigger movie than this.
Yeah, well, it'll be to look at it from a market point of view. It'll be curious to see how many people listen to this one,
Right.
versus how many people
Of
listen
course,
to Mad
of
Max
course.
or something like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's pretty much it we got on that. Oh, by the way, I promised that my dad would do a review of Kung Fury. He did agree to do it, but he had a busy week, so we're gonna play it next week. He did watch it, and I told him to not tell me about it until we recorded it.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to that.
But anyway, sorry. I guess final thought, Shahir. I'm on this film. I said mine.
Listen, if I love the trilogy, and I think Songs from the Second Floor is amazing. It really changed my life. If you can't make it to the theater to see any of these, watch Roy Andersson's commercials on YouTube.
Okay.
And that's a great starting point. If you enjoy those, then take it to the next level after that. But I
Okay.
think it's look, that's that one scene that we've been talking about with music being derived from people's pain is absolutely stunning, and is one of the most profoundly beautiful scenes I've seen in my life.
Okay. Well, guys and girls, this has been the only podcast about movies. And this is the edition, the Absurdity edition. That is a pigeon sat on a branch, reflecting on existence. Let's see, Shahir, you got us an email address. People can email us.
Okay, we're starting to get more real about this. Shit just got real, yo.
REEL.
We have an email address, we have a Facebook account, and we have a Twitter account.
That's insane.
Okay, this week you can email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. And here's a little incentive for you.
What?
If the first person to email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com that is from the continental United States and happens to be close to an AMC movie theater will get 2 free tickets to any AMC movie of their choice.
You've lost your goddamn mind, Shahir.
I know, that's crazy, isn't it?
And I'm going to put a caveat on your free movie tickets. If you go see a movie on our dime, you have to record an audio review of that film in 1 minute. That is what I'm going to say, and then we're going to play it, and then it's going to be fun.
Awesome.
So that, please email us, first person to do it. It will be a good damn time.
Onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Awesome. And what's our Twitter and our other nonsense?
We have a Twitter at onlymoviepod, and we have a Facebook page, The Only Podcast About Movies.
Wow, we're just all over the damn place. Shahir, if people want to find you outside of podcasting about movies, being the only one, of course, where could they find you?
Check me out at my webpage, www.shahirdaud.com, which is SHAHIRDAUD.
All right. I can be found at MatthewKroll.com. We have such original names. Also, Skeletor4Prez, the number 4 in the middle, and then PREZ is my Instagram, and also Emperor MSK on Twitter. Please tweet, Insta, whatever the hell to me, and tell me about movies that you're seeing. Tell me about if you saw a pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on existence. I would love to hear from other people that have seen this film before they listen to this thing. Hell, after this thing would be great.
And you'll get 2 free movie tickets.
Well, if you're the first one.
Yeah, well,
That's the thing. So viewer, listener discretion advised. Anyway, this has been the longest episode of the only podcast about movies. So, I mean, we're going over a little bit. I think we're like an hour, 3 minutes. Our producers are going to kill us.
We're going to lose our advertising budget.
Wait, there's none of that. Anyway, my name is Matthew Kroll.
My name's Shahir Dowd.
And thank you for taking a journey into the human experience with us this week. Next week, I bet you there's going to be some sugar.
And no pigeons.
Maybe a pigeon. Ooh, that's a pigeon noise.
I think I'm more of a cat.
Wait, that's a dolphin.